Welcome back, my wandering dreamers. The candles lean forward again, as if remembering your scent. You've found your way back to the temple, where shadows breathe in stories, and every fairy tale bleeds a little truth beneath its lace. If you have not yet walked with me through part 1, through the thorns, the ashes, and the tides, you may wish to do so before we begin. There we unmasked Sleeping Beauty, Snow White, and the Little Mermaid, and watched the silk of illusion burn into something truer. I'll share the link in the description. You will find it waiting in the dark, patient and alive, beneath the same stars that light tonight. But this evening is different. This one is a gift, a small spell wrapped in October's breath. A Halloween offering, from my hands to your dreams. Tonight, the veil is thinner. Even the old tales remember what they were before kindness edited them. So settle in. Let the lights fall away. Let the pulse in your throat slow until it matches the rhythm of the candles. And as you drift, know this. Every story tonight will walk with bare feet. No glass slippers. No silver crowns, only truth gleaming like bone beneath the velvet. If you have not already, subscribe to the temple. It keeps the fires lit. And should you have a tale you wish me to tell, a myth, a whisper, a darkness you would like to see dressed in stars, leave your request in the comments below. Now breathe. The book opens again. Welcome to Real Disney Horror Stories. Part 2. May the night remember your name. Beauty and the Beast, the Rose in the Curse of the Fortunate Island. Come closer, dreamer, of broken mirrors. Tonight I will tell you how love was not born from kindness, but from a curse passed through generations like a family heirloom too sharp to hold. There was once a merchant who lived in a house that glittered with chandeliers and laughter. 12 children filled its corridors, 6 sons and 6 daughters, each one groomed by wealth to believe the world would applaud their footsteps. The youngest daughter was the most beautiful, so they called her after what they valued most, beauty. It wasn't her real name, just something she went by, but what they saw as her gift was only her disguise. Her sisters learned early that envy eats slower than hunger, and so they fed it carefully. When the mansion burned and the ships were swallowed by the sea, the family's fortune went to join the dead. They had no choice but to move to a cottage where gold no longer listened to their names and humble chores awaited. Beauty rose before the sun and washed soot from the plates of people who once bowed to her. Her sisters slept late and spoke the language of loss fluently and belittled Beauty for having accepted and adjusted in the current environment so easily. Little did they know she worked tirelessly to put them at ease and provide as much comfort as she was capable of. Pride survived their poverty. It always does. The 2 eldest initially believed that they wouldn't have to leave town, for they had several lovers who they were sure would be glad to have them, though they had no fortune. But the good ladies were mistaken, for their lovers slighted and forsook them in their poverty. As they were not beloved on account of their pride, everybody said, "They do not deserve to be pitied. We are very glad to see their pride humbled. Let them go and give themselves quality airs in milking the cows and minding their dairy." But, added they, "we are extremely concerned for Beauty. She was such a charming, sweet-tempered creature, spoke so kindly to poor people, and was of such an affable, obliging behavior. Nay, several gentlemen would have married her, though they knew she had not a penny, but she told them she could not think of leaving her poor father in his misfortunes, but was determined to go along with him into the country to comfort and attend him. Poor Beauty at first was sadly grieved at the loss of her fortune, but, said she to herself, were I to cry ever so much, that would not make things better. I must try to make myself happy without a fortune. This, however, only made her sisters dislike her more. Years later, a rumor arrived wearing the scent of false hope. One of the merchant's ships had returned. The daughters gathered like vultures around their father's kindness, demanding gowns and jewels to replace the dignity they'd misplaced. Only Beauty asked for nothing, but when her father insisted, she smiled and said, "A rose, then, since they don't grow on these lands." Only that, she did not crave it. She only wanted to keep from wounding his hope of getting her something as well. The road back from disappointment is really long, and it was on that road the merchant lost his way. Snow fell thick as silence. The forest opened its mouth and swallowed him, and when his horse, the poor thing, half dead from exhaustion, stumbled into a clearing, he found a palace half buried in frost and sorcery. No servants, no host, only a fire already waiting, and a table laid as if for a ghost who had learned hospitality. He waited till midnight for the host to arrive. When no one did, he ate because hunger is older than fear. He slept because exhaustion makes even the damned dream of mercy. And in the morning, when he woke, he saw a pair of clothes laid out for him in the room. He got dressed and looked in the front yard, hoping to meet and express his gratitude to the host. He reached the stable and saw his horse well tended to and well rested. It was then when he turned that he saw the garden full of roses in their absolute bloom, that he remembered his youngest daughter. He plucked one, hoping to take it for his beauty, but, the moment he did, the garden screamed. Out of the mist came the creature who owned it, a beast stitched together from all the punishments a god might imagine. "Thief," it growled, "I offered you shelter, and you repay me with theft." The merchant fell to his knees, stammering of his daughter's wish for the rose, of his poverty and promises. The beast listened, and its voice came like iron dragged over stone. "Then one of your daughters must come willingly, in your place. If she refuses, I will come for you myself within 3 months." He went home with the rose still wet with snow. He told the family of what had passed. Beauty understood before he spoke. She didn't shed a single tear. Her sisters howled and blamed her, as envy always does when confronted by courage. "Do but see the pride of that little wretch," said they. "She would not ask for fine clothes, as we did. But no, truly, Miss wanted to distinguish herself. So now she will be the death of our poor father, and yet she does not so much as shed a tear." "Why should I?" answered Beauty. "It would be very needless, for my father shall not suffer upon my account. Since the monster will accept of one of his daughters, I will deliver myself up to all his fury, and I am very happy in thinking that my death will save my father's life and be a proof of my tender love for him." Her brothers swore to kill the beast, but courage born of outrage has a short life. Beauty silenced them all with the calm of someone already chosen by fate. She later informed her father that 2 gentlemen came in his absence and courted her sisters. She begged him to consent to their marriage and give them whatever fortunes they had left, for she was so good that she loved them and forgave heartily all their ill usage. These wicked creatures rubbed their eyes with an onion to force some tears when they parted with their sister, but her brothers were really concerned. Beauty was the only one who did not shed tears at parting, because she would not increase their uneasiness. When she entered the beast's castle, candles bent toward her as if in recognition. The air carried a hum like something remembering its lines. Beasts that once had faces watched her from the corners, stone eyes wet with old pity. At night the creature came. It asked if she was comfortable, if the music pleased her, if she might let him share her bed. She refused each time softly. He sighed each time like an earthquake restraining itself. Her dreams were not merciful. A man beautiful as guilt, appeared to her, begging for rescue, and beside him stood a fairy veiled in flame whispering, "Do not be deceived by appearances," and told her she will be rewarded for selflessly saving her father. As such deed don't go unnoticed by the higher forces of the universe. So Beauty woke each morning unsure which prison she occupied, his or her own. The days folded into luxury. Months passed, like petals rotting in slow perfume. The beast's kindness unsettled her more than his claws ever had. When he asked what troubled her, she confessed homesickness. He told her she might go, though his voice cracked on the word. "Return within 2 moons," he said, "or I will die of longing." She promised him that she will. He gave her a ring that carried her home in the blink of a heartbeat. She woke in her father's cottage, surrounded by warmth and disbelief. A trunk arrived for her magically as well, with gowns of gold and diamonds, courtesy of the beast. In the meantime, they sent to her sisters, who hastened there with their husbands. They were both of them very unhappy. The eldest had married a gentleman, extremely handsome indeed, but so fond of his own person that he was full of nothing but his own dear self, and neglected his wife. The second had married a man of wit, but he only made use of it to plague and torment everybody, and his wife most of all. Beauty's sisters sickened with envy when they saw her dressed like a princess, and more beautiful than ever, nor could all her obliging affectionate behavior stifle their jealousy, which was ready to burst when she told them how happy she was. They went down into the garden to vent it in tears, and said one to the other, "In what way is this little creature better than us, that she should be so much happier?" "Sister," said the oldest, "a thought just strikes my mind. Let us endeavor to detain her above a week, and perhaps the silly monster will be so enraged at her for breaking her word that he will devour her." "Right, sister," answered the other. "Therefore we must show her as much kindness as possible." After they had taken this resolution, they went up and behaved so affectionately to their sister that poor Beauty wept for joy. When the week was expired, they cried and tore their hair, and seemed so sorry to part with her that she promised to stay a week longer. It gave them no personal benefit, yet evil hearts are the biggest curse of them all, and Beauty, that beautiful dumb child, played right into their hands. When the second moon waned, she dreamed of the castle, of the roses turned black, of the beast lying among them, starving. She woke with guilt like frost in her lungs. She slipped the ring on her finger and whispered his name. The castle received her like a widow recognizing her loss. She found him in a cave beneath the garden, his breath a thread about to break. When she touched him, her tears burned on his skin. "I am sorry," she said. "I have learned too late what love means. I'm sorry I took too long to come back to you. I will marry you, my bee. Please come back to me." She fetched water from a spring and poured it over him. The water hissed. The beast stirred. When he opened his eyes, they were human. A prince rose where a monster had lain. The air broke into song. Fireworks wrote forgiveness across the sky, and for the first time she saw the face from her dreams, the one the fairy had shown her all along. But this tale, my dear listener, does not end with love alone. The fairy returned, bringing with her a queen, gray with years of mourning. The queen looked upon Beauty and frowned. "A merchant's daughter cannot sit beside my son." The fairy laughed softly, the kind of laugh that opens graves. "She is no merchant's child," said she. "She is your brother's lost heir, the princess of Fortunate Island." And thus the veil lifted, a curse born from a fairy's envy, a mother's war, a godmother's lust. The beast had been a prince cursed for refusing his guardian's bed. Beauty, a princess hidden among mortals, swapped at birth to fulfill a prophecy of redemption. Their love, it seemed, had been arranged long before they met, a punishment disguised as fate. When all the truths had been dragged into the light, the fairy unpetrified the castle's servants, returned the queen to her throne, and locked the evil godmother in a cage of her own magic. The royal family rejoiced. The merchant and his surviving children were brought to court, their envy forgotten, their poverty scrubbed clean. And so Beauty became queen beside her resurrected beast, governing with a heart too kind to be at peace. They lived for centuries, kept young by the fair blood in her veins, and the old magic that had ruined them both. But some nights, when the torches gutter low, she dreams of the cave again, of fur under her hands, of a creature who had asked for nothing but her voice saying yes. She wakes beside perfection, and listens to the wind scratching at the window like a beast, remembering its name. Because the truth is this, the spell never broke, it only changed its shape. Breathe now, my weary listener. Let the garden close behind your eye. Let the scent of roses drift away, soft and tired, like a secret that has finally been told. You have walked through marble halls and mirrors that remember hunger. You have seen beauty dressed in sorrow, and love pretending to be salvation. But you are safe here. The beast will not follow you beyond this breath. His shadow fades, and the roses fall soundlessly into sleep. In the quiet that remains, feel the weight of your own heartbeat, slow, steady, honest. It belongs to no curse, no crown, no spell, only to you. Breathe, relax your muscles. Rapunzel, the garden, the witch, and the window without a door. Listen, in every forest there is a tower, and in every tower, a woman who was once a wish. There was a man and a woman who had prayed for a child so long that their voices became ritual, their silence a superstition. They lived beside a walled garden, a paradise so lush it mocked their emptiness. Through a small window, the wife watched the garden's green veins glitter beneath the sun. The herbs grew thick as hair, the flowers burned in color so fierce that it hurt to stare. And among them, in one trembling bed of earth, grew a plant called Rapunzel, leaves slick and pale as newborn skin. She got pregnant and began to crave it, the plant, first in thought, then in dream, then in every waking hour. No matter what she did, she couldn't shake the thought of the plant from her mind. Hunger became her prayer, desire her disease. She wasted away until her ribs counted the days she had left. Her husband, frightened by her fading, climbed the wall in the hush of night. The garden smelled of spells and rot, but love, when desperate, has no nose for danger. He tore a handful of leaves and fled. His wife devoured them raw, her mouth red with sap, and for the first time in months she smiled. But desire, once fed, grows teeth. By the next dusk she wanted more, demanded it like penance. So again he scaled the wall. This time a shadow waited. The sorceress rose from the vines as though the earth had birthed her itself. Her eyes glowed the color of a bruised fruit. "How dare you," she said, "steal from my garden and feed from my magic? That too not once, but dare to show your face here again to steal more." The man fell to his knees, trembling, telling her of his wife, her longing, her sickness. The witch's mouth curved, but it was not a smile. "Then take what you came for," she said, "but when your wife's hunger gives you a child, that child will be mine." He agreed, because fear makes cowards of the loving. When the child was born, she was beautiful like the glow of the sun. Her parents were delighted by her mere existence. The witch, however, appeared at the threshold like a storm that had learned to walk to claim what was owed to her. She took the girl, named her Rapunzel, and left the house colder than before. Rapunzel grew under the witch's watch, pale, perfect, and obedient. Her hair, spun from sunlight, trailed the floor in waves. But the witch, who loved ownership more than affection, built her a tower with no doors, only a window that stared at nothing. When she wished to see her child, she called up softly, "Rapunzel, Rapunzel, let down your hair," and the girl, gentle fool that she was, would drop her golden braid down like an offering, so that her captor might climb her body to reach her. Years passed. Songs replaced conversation. Loneliness has a melody all its own. And one day, as her voice drifted through the trees, a prince heard it, a sound like sunlight morning itself. He searched for a door but found none. He returned every evening just to listen, until the melody entered him like an infection. One night, hiding among the trees, he saw the witch arrive. He watched her chant the words and ascend, a plan devised in his brain. And when the forest darkened again, the witch left hours ago and wouldn't be returning till later the next day. He whispered the same incantation against the tower. "Rapunzel, Rapunzel, let down your hair." The braid fell, heavy, shining, trembling. He climbed, and when he emerged into the small cell of skylight, Rapunzel froze. She had never seen a man before, and fear fluttered in her chest like a trapped bird. But the prince spoke gently, his voice dressed in worship. He told her that her song had haunted him, that his heart had been wandering toward her ever since. She blushed and she believed him. Captivity makes any kindness look like love. When he asked her to be his wife, she said yes, because yes was the first rebellion she'd ever been allowed. That night they made love to one another for the first time, embracing the feelings stewing between them. They planned her escape, weaving a ladder from strands of silk he brought her each night before they laid next to one another. And when he left her, he always kissed her hands, the same hands that had never touched freedom. But no cage keeps secrets forever. You see, Rapunzel was never taught what making love was, and what it could ultimately lead to. She, unlike her mother, had no problems of conception. One day Rapunzel turned to the witch and said innocently, "Mother Gothel, why are my dresses so tight? They do not fit me anymore." The witch froze, and in that silence the truth was loud enough. "You wicked child," she hissed. Her rage cracked like lightning across the room. She seized the golden hair, wrapped it around her fist, and with two savage cuts, her freedom fell to the floor. The braid gleamed like a slain serpent. She cast Rapunzel into a barren desert, a world of dust and thirst, where even her shadow had no place to hide. There, alone, and half mad with grief, Rapunzel gave birth to twins, a boy and a girl, both crying like unfinished prayers. That same night, the witch tied the severed braid to the window hook. When the prince returned and called out his beloved's name, the hair fell obediently. He climbed, heart hammering, eyes bright with expectation, only to find, not Rapunzel, but the witch waiting with a smile too wide. "She's gone," the witch said. "The cat has eaten the bird. You will never hear her song again." Grief hollowed him. He fell from the tower into the thorns below. They drank his eyes, leaving him blind and bleeding among the roots. He wandered through forests that had no paths, fed on leaves, and drank rain, and the name Rapunzel became his only language. Years passed. The desert took mercy where the forest had not. One day the wind carried a song across the dunes. He followed it, stumbling toward the voice that had once saved him. And there she was, her face lean, her eyes radiant with the exhaustion of survival, her children clutching her torn dress. She ran to him, and when her tears fell into the sockets where his eyes had been, they burned like rebirth. He saw again, not the tower, not the witch, not the years lost, but her. They returned to his kingdom, where stories say they lived happily and satisfied. But the truth, dear listener, is that you do not unlearn captivity overnight. Rapunzel never braided her hair again. The prince never built towers with windows. And every time their children sang, they wept a little, though they never knew why. Because the song still belonged to the witch, and the tower still stands somewhere in a forest that no longer grows. Rest now, traveler of tangled hair and hollow towers. The stones remember every song you've heard tonight. Let them fade. The wind no longer carries her cry, only the hush that follows after rescue. Breathe slowly. The night forgives even those who climbed for love and fell for it. Somewhere far away, the forest closes its eyes. The witch dreams of the girl she could not keep, and the stars drift closer to listen. The world is quieter now until the next story wakes. Breathe. The ocean that dared to dream. The tale of Maui and the heart of the world. Before there were islands, before there were names, there was only the breathing dark. The sea turned in her sleep, and from her dreams rose the first lands. Small, trembling, hungry for light. Out of that shimmer of beginnings came Maui, child of gods and men, born too curious for silence. He was not a god, not exactly, only a spark the ocean could not drown. Where others prayed, he laughed. Where others feared, he questioned. And the world, though vast, began to answer him. His greatest power was transformations. His story can only be told in little chapters describing his mischievous achievements. The binding of the sun. The first answer came from the sky. The days were short then. The sun sped across the heavens like a thief on the run, leaving humankind in endless dusk. Maui, furious that the people had barely any time to fish or plant or love, he climbed a mountain made of bone and ash. He wove a rope from his sister's hair, each strand a promise, each knot a defiance, and with it he caught the sun as it rose. The sky burned, the rope smoked, but Maui held fast, and with the jawbone of his ancestor he beat the sun until it agreed to crawl, not run, across the sky. Since then the days have lingered, warm, reluctant, mortal. The hook and the islands, but heroes are never satisfied. One night, Maui stowed himself in his brother's canoe and cast a hook carved from his grandmother's jaw. He sang to the depths, not kindly, but commandingly, and something vast answered. The line went taut, the sea cracked open, and an island rose thrashing from the deep. Its mountains were the ribs of a fish too ancient to die. His brothers, frightened and greedy, cut into its flesh, and the wounds became valleys, rivers, and gorges. The earth still remembers that pain. Every earthquake is the island shuddering at the memory of the very hook. The theft of fire. Then came the fire. Maui, watching the hearths of humankind flicker and die, wondered where flame had first been born. So he went to the volcano goddess, Mahuika, whose fingers blazed with living fire. He begged her for a spark. She gave him one nail. He doused it. She gave another, and another, until her patience burned hotter than her hands. Realizing his trickery, Mahuika screamed and tore the fire from her body, flinging it across the world. The forests ignited, the mountains glowed, and Maui fled, calling the rain to save him. When water met fire, lightning was born, the child of rebellion and forgiveness. Had it not, the earth as we know it would have collapsed from the fire. The descent into death. But even flame and ocean could not satisfy him. Maui wished to defeat death itself. He sought out Hainui Tipo, the great goddess of night, whose eyes were stars and whose mouth was a crescent moon sharpened into teeth. He believed that if he could enter her sleeping body and emerge from her mouth, humankind would never die again. So he turned himself into a worm, small, slick, silent, and crawled into the goddess's vagina as she slept. But the birds that followed him, horrified and amused, laughed at the sight. The sound woke the goddess. She clenched her obsidian thighs and Maui was crushed between her teeth. His bones became coral, his spirit became the wind that never rests, and thus death remained unconquered, and humanity lost its one chance at immortality. The heart of the world, the gods mourned him for a moment, then continued making islands, but the sea remembered his defiance. She rolled inside and dreamed again, and from her dreaming came a new goddess, one of creation and compassion. They called her Tefiti, and from her chest bloomed all green things. Yet every heart, even a goddess's, has a shadow. When rage and grief found her, fire erupted through her kindness, and Teka was born, the same power, unsoftened by mercy. Where Tefiti's touch had raised islands, Teka's breath turned them to ash. They were not enemies, only the two halves of the same pulse, creation exhaling, destruction inhaling. The sea still keeps their story. When the waves strike the rocks and hiss, that is Tekai answering Tefiti. When the tide withdraws and returns, that is Maui's heart, still daring the gods to begin again. So remember this, wanderer of shorelines. The ocean is not gentle, it is just patient. It does not forgive, it forgets slowly. It will cradle you or crush you, depending on whether you come to it in wonder or in pride. And if ever you see a hook carved from bone, washed up upon the sand, do not touch it. The sea might think you are ready to finish what Maui began. Rest now, voyager of salt and storm. The waves that roared have quieted, the sea curls inward, a vast heart folding back into its pulse. You have heard of fire, of bone, of gods who dared to shape the dawn. Now, let them sink beneath your breath, slow, deep, and forgiving. The moon tilts her face above the horizon, and the stars scatter like spilled pearls upon the black. All things drift toward silence, even heroes, even oceans. Listen, the tide hums your name, and the night, patient and endless, draws you farther into dream. Breathe, Tarzan, the law of fang and shadow. There are places the moon will not look for long, places where roots crawl like veins and the air smells of birth and rot. The jungle does not love, it devours, and those it spares, it remakes in its own image. From such a place came a child. He was born in a cabin, swallowed by green, to parents who prayed in whispers the forest did not understand. When death came, in the shape of an ape's fury and a mother's scream, the jungle adopted what was left. A she-ape named Kala, with empty arms, found him among splintered wood and blood, and in her grief she named him her son. Thus began the story of a boy raised by hunger. He grew under the law of tooth and tendon. The sun carved him lean. The shadows taught him patience. The apes were his teachers, brutal, honest, and unmerciful. He learned to kill before he learned to speak. Knives, snares, stones, teeth, all were tools of survival. When his first kill came, it was not celebrated but accepted, as sunrise accepts the end of night. From that moment, he belonged to the rhythm of prey and predator, to the red chorus that sings only one refrain: eat or be eat. He grew into a man shaped like a question, human in form, but something older in spirit. The beasts called him brother, the trees bowed when he passed, and those who entered his jungle without reverence did not leave whole. His first interaction with humans was of brutal hunters and cannibalistic tribes. One day their arrow came. It sang through the leaves and found the heart of Kala, the ape mother who had carried him through every storm. She fell, and the jungle fell silent. When Tarzan found her, he did not weep. He followed the scent of iron through the dark, tracked the hunter who had done it, and in the night, he answered death with death. He left the man's body hanging in the fork of a tree, a message written in silence: "This jungle is not yours." From that night on, the beasts did not fear him, they obeyed. He was not their king, he was their equal, a predator among predators, a ghost carved from vengeance and violence. Among his kills he found relics of the world that birthed him: a cabin, a mirror, books left to rot. He traced the letters on the pages, shapes that once belonged to another tongue. By moonlight he taught himself the lost speech of men, and when he read the name written in faded ink, John Clayton, Lord of Greystoke, the jungle whispered it back, curious. He did not yet know it was his. When strangers came, pale-skinned wanderers with guns and greed, the jungle watched with a familiar amusement. They were stranded at a cannibal feast in an African village, the peril Jane and her party face when captured. Tarzan intervened, but even he couldn't save everyone. He saved the humans that are left alive from violent jungle threats. But even in these heroics, his methods were lethal. He killed more than a would-be attacker, animal or human, without hesitation, whether it was snapping a leopard's spine or impaling a villainous henchman. The concept of mercy was foreign to him. Tarzan meted out jungle justice with primal efficiency. They called him savage. They called him beast. He saved them anyway, for reasons he did not understand. But when he saw a young woman among them, his heart remembered something gentler, a warmth his blood did not yet have a word for, and feelings he couldn't possibly comprehend. Yet even love cannot tame a creature of the hunt. For every tenderness, there was blood. For every embrace, a kill. He remained both man and the myth, caught between the lullaby of civilization and the howl that raised him. Tarzan hungered for raw flesh and often fed on his kills, smearing himself with blood. She once saw him sitting atop a kill, drinking the warm blood and tearing at the flesh, more beast than man. In time he would learn his lineage, that he was born to lords, that the blood of empire ran in the same veins that now pulsed with the rhythm of the jungle. But the vines had already claimed him. He could wear the clothes of men, but their world smelled of cages to him. So he returned to what was a green cathedral to him, to the songs of insects and thunder, to the freedom that tasted of rain and death, to the jungle. And the jungle kept him. It does not release what it remakes. They say you can still hear him on moonless nights, a cry that is not entirely human but not completely animal either, moving between branches with the ease of the wind, watching the world he left behind rot under its own gentleness. The beasts remember him as one of theirs. The trees remember him as a question, and the night remembers him as a warning. Civilization is a costume the wild allows us to wear, but only until it wants its child back. Breathe now, wanderer of the wild. The vines loosen their hold, the drums fade into heartbeat. You have walked with creatures that kill to live and live to kill, and the jungle has whispered its laws into your bones. Let it fall quiet again. The moon glows through the canopy like a single watching eye. Even the predators have curled into silence, their hunger turning to dream. Rest, for the night is changing shape, and somewhere beyond the trees another story begins to stir. Breathe and I shall unfold. The Snow Queen, the mirror and the rose. The North remembers differently. Where men see winter as absence, the North knows it as a presence, alive, white, endless, and mercilessly pure. It is said that somewhere beyond the aurora's veil, a queen made of frost sits upon a throne of mirrors, and that her breath is the cold that teaches the world to shiver. But this story does not begin with her. It begins with a mirror, a dark glass, made by an evil troll who hated humanity and wished to mock the light. In its reflection, beauty twisted into ugliness, kindness into folly. One day the mirror shattered, and the wind scattered its splinters like a plague. They fell upon the world unseen. One lodged in a young boy's eye, another pierced his heart, freezing the boy's heart and making his vision cruel and cynical. And where love had once lived, winter took root instead. The boy's name was Kai. He once laughed beneath summer leaves with a girl named Gerda. They shared a rooftop garden, grew roses in boxes, and believed the world small and kind. But after the mirror's poison found him, Kai's laughter froze in his throat. He mocked the roses, mocked Gerda's tears. She couldn't even call him the same person anymore. The only familiarity that remained was his face. That remained unchanged. But everything else about him became foreign. Then came the Snow Queen. She arrived in a storm that whispered her name through every snowflake. To Kai she was beauty itself, a face carved of ice and moonlight, eyes clear as cruelty. She kissed him once to numb him to the cold, and again to make him forget he had ever loved. Then she whisked him away in her sleigh to the north, where snowflakes swarm like bees, and her palace lay upon a lake frozen into shards of mirror. So she set out barefoot and alone, following the current toward the cold. She wandered through kingdoms and seasons, a child armed with nothing but faith. In a garden of eternal summer she met a sorceress, sweet-faced and lonely, who brushed away her memories and made the roses sink beneath the soil. But love is stubborn as weeds. When Gerda wept, the flowers rose again, telling her where to go. A crow led her next, a vain bird with more heart than sense, to a palace where she thought she'd find Kai. She found only strangers, smiling behind warm glass. Then robbers took her, and in a forest of knives and laughter, she befriended a wild little girl who freed her for no reason at all. With a reindeer for a steed, Gerda rode north, her breath freezing into prayer. At last she came to the land where the stars hung low, and snow fell not as weather but as law. The Snow Queen's palace rose before her, a cathedral of silence, every pillar ablaze. On the floor lay Kai, still as death, his eyes fixed on fragments of ice he tried to arrange into a single word. The queen had promised him freedom if he could spell the secret name of eternity. He could not. Gerda ran to him and embraced him. Her tears, the only warmth left in that place, fell upon his chest. They melted the shard in his heart. And when she sang a hymn about Jesus, her warm love burned away the evil magic inside him, and the sound cracked the spell. Kai began to cry. The splinter in his eye washed away, and he saw her as she had always been. His home, his summer, his friend. They laughed through their tears, and the ice around them stirred as if remembering what it once was. Water, flowing, alive. The shards trembled and slid together, forming the word Kai had sought but never known. Eternity. The queen's realm fell silent. The blizzard ceased, and when they stepped outside, the sky was blue again. They passed the gardens that had deceived her, the forest that had tested her, and all those who had helped her smiled and let them go. When they reached their city, the roses were blooming again. They had grown tall enough to touch the roof. They were children no longer, but their hearts, scarred, thawed, and new, remained untouched by bitterness. The world had taught them that love is not a season. It is a light that can melt glass and outlast ice. And in the farthest north, where no one ever goes, the Snow Queen sits once more upon her frozen lake, watching the shards drift like stars. When she closes her eyes, she remembers the warmth she cannot name, and weeps frost into her hands, because even winter, for all its beauty, still envies the spring. Rest now, wanderer of frost and glass. The storm has passed. Even the snow listens for your breathing. You have walked through mirrors, through love turned to winter and back again. Now let the ice release you. The aurora bends like a sigh, painting sleep across the sky's cold skin. The Snow Queen closes her eyes, and for a moment, the night forgets to be cruel. Breathe, let warmth return to your hands. Another tale waits, patient, beyond the thought. The puppet who learned to bleed. The tale of Pinocchio. Once in a small room that smelled of sawdust and loneliness, an old man carved a boy from pine. He named him Pinocchio, and the puppet blinked as though the soul had been hiding in the wood all along. But this soul was not gentle. It came into the world laughing, hungry and unbroken by conscience. The first voice that tried to guide him was small, a cricket in the corner, offering warnings about goodness and obedience. The puppet grew tired of its chirping. He threw a wooden mallet and killed it on spot. Silence. And so, from the very beginning, the story of Pinocchio began with a death, not of a man, but of the voice that could have made him one. The puppet's life was not play, but punishment. He ran from his maker, Geppetto, and found that freedom in the world was another kind of prison. He danced on strings of greed, temptation, and hunger. When he entered the great marionette theater, the puppet master with the coal-black beard, named Mangafuoco, saw him and said, "This one burns well." Pinocchio was nearly fed to the flames. His wooden skin meant to warm another's supper. He begged for mercy, speaking of his father's poverty, and the man, perhaps moved, perhaps tired, spared him, leaving the puppet with a handful of 5 gold coins and a lesson not yet learned. But gold is a curse in every story. On the road he met 2 creatures, a fox limping on deceit, a cat blinded by greed. They promised him wonders. Plant your coins in the field of miracles, and a tree of wealth will rise. He obeyed. The field swallowed his hope. That night, in masks of shadow, the fox and the cat returned, disguised as bandits, demanding the coins he had hidden in his mouth. When he refused, they hung him up by the neck from a great oak tree, and waited for him to suffocate and stop moving. The wind rocked him like a pendulum between sin and lesson. The world might have ended there, a puppet dangling lifeless as a warning to children, but mercy, strange, feminine, and blue, took pity. A fairy with hair the color of sky found him, cut the rope, and called him son. Under her care, the wooden boy learned to speak of kindness and truth, but each lie he told grew visible, his nose stretching forward, a branch of shame for the world to see. In a land where children never worked or studied, called Toyland, he and a boy named Candlewick played until the play became punishment. Ears sprouted from their heads, their hands became hooves, and soon there stood no boys, but 2 braying donkeys, sold to men who saw only profit in their pain. Candlewick was sold to a farmer, and worked to death. Pinocchio, on the other hand, was whipped, caged, and made to dance, a beast entertaining beasts. When his body broke, they tied a stone to his neck and threw him into the sea to drown, so later they could skin him and make a drum from his hide. The ocean took pity where men did not. The salt washed away the curse of flesh, and the donkey sank as wood again. When the waves cast him back ashore, the puppet rose once more, empty-eyed but alive. He wandered again, until the sea itself swallowed him whole. Inside the belly of a monstrous fish, he found the old man who had carved him, thin and weary in the dark. Geppetto, his maker, who had gone searching for the son who had run away. Pinocchio wept for the first time, and the tears left stains on his wooden cheek. He carried Geppetto out through the creature's mouth, through stench and darkness and fear, and for once did not run from responsibility. Years passed. The fairy tested him again. letting him believe she had died to see if his heart would break for another. It did. He worked. He cared. He learned that kindness is a harder craft than carpentry. And one night, when he slept beside his ailing father, the fairy returned. She kissed him and whispered, "Be what you have earned." In the morning, sunlight touched his skin, and it was no longer varnish but flesh. The old wooden shell lay motionless in the chair, a husk of who he had been. The boy touched his heart and felt it beat, not smoothly, not proudly, but honestly. He smiled, and the world, for once, smiled back. But some nights, when the wind rattles the shutters of old workshops, you can still hear a faint creak, the sound of wood, remembering what it once wanted to be. And if you listen closely, you'll hear the whisper that haunts every child who ever lied. Not all puppets wake. Some stay dreaming forever, their strings pulled by regret instead of love. The candles burn low, their wax pooling like milk on the old carpenter's bench. The sawdust settles, the tools fall silent. Only the faint echo of a heartbeat remains. The boy who learned to bleed, and the puppet who still dreams of movement. Let them rest together, wood and flesh entwined, their story carved at last into peace. Outside, night presses her face to the window. The stars glimmer like nails in the sky, and the wind hums through the keyhole as if remembering a lullaby. Breathe softly, traveler. The workshop sleeps, and another tale waits behind the next heartbeat of the dark. The boy who would not grow. The tale of Peter and the shadows. The story begins as all lost things do, with a window left open, and the night waiting outside. In that breath between waking and dream, a boy slips through, laughing like wind through a broken glass. His feet make no sound. His shadow moves a little too freely. He is the child of flight and forgetting, the boy who would not grow. Peter, they call him, not saint, not sinner, merely forever. He lives where time has no teeth, in an island shaped by memory and wish. Neverland, place where the sun never stays long enough to count your year. Here mermaids sing to drown you, fairies curse and bless in the same breath, and pirates die smiling under the boy's blade. For death in Neverland is not tragedy, it is play. Peter laughs when he fights. His dagger flashes like a second star. He calls it thinning out when the lost boys vanish, the ones who start to remember what growing feels like. Wendy once asked him, "What happens when they grow too tall for your games?" Peter only smiled, that cruel and innocent smile, and said, "They don't." It's highly likely that he kills them. No one asks where they go. Perhaps the sea keeps their secrets. Perhaps Peter does. In this world of endless youth, mercy is only a story mothers tell. When he forgets, he returns to find that those he loved have aged, and he is still the same boy at their window. Once, he came back looking for Wendy, but she had already become the very thing he feared. A grown woman with lines by her eyes, and a child sleeping in her arms. He wept like something dear to him was broken, but not knowing why, he felt betrayed that Wendy didn't remain a child for him. But then he started laughing again, the way the lost laugh to try and stay alive. He took Wendy's daughter instead, and later her daughter's daughter, repeating the only song he knows, the lullaby of stealing innocence from time. Even his companions carried sharpness in their wings. Tinker Bell, small and bright as a curse, once tried to have Wendy shot from the sky. Love makes monsters of us all, and jealousy burns hotter than fairy fire. Captain Hook, that elegant ruin of a man, feared Peter not for his youth, but for the emptiness behind his smile, the wild, heartless joy that civilized men can never learn. Hook heard the ticking clock and trembled. while Peter only heard rhythm to dance by. He threw no shade, no shadow of conscience or hesitation. In fight and love to slaughter in delight, and the crocodile, poor creature, was merely time made flesh, the one thing that could follow Peter but never catch him. That Peter comes not only for sleeping children, but for those whose mothers are already crying by the bedside. He holds out his hand and says, "Come away and play. You won't have to grow up anymore." And they go smiling. For who would refuse flight after pain? Who would not choose a dream where the world never ends? But even paradise rots when it forgets how to change. And Peter, the poor eternal Peter, is a ghost of his own wish, never getting older, never getting wiser, forever loved but forever alone. Sometimes on nights when the wind sings through the eaves, he still comes to the windows of grown-ups who once believed. He peers inside, puzzled by the faces that remind him of faces he's lost. If you wake too soon, you might catch a shadow at the sill, and a whisper soft as the sea, "Will you fly?" But if you listen closer, beneath the laughter, you'll hear the sorrow that keeps him young, the quiet, endless cry of the boy who can never come home. The law of the jungle, the tale of Mowgli. In the hour when the jungle is neither dark nor dawn, when the mist still clings to the trees like a half-remembered dream, the wolves speak their laws. They do not sing them, they recite them, low and solemn, as if the earth itself is listening. Among those laws there is one above all. The strength of the pack is the wolf, and the strength of the wolf is the pack. Break it, and the jungle forgets your name. It was on such a night that a man's cry broke the silence. A tiger had hunted beyond its right, Shere Khan striped with arrogance and hunger. When dawn came, the cries were gone, and in the grass, by the wolf's den, lay a child, naked, wailing, and warm. Father Wolf lowered his muzzle. Mother Wolf growled low and said, "He is mine." And from that breath, the jungle gained a man-cub, and the man-cub gained a law older than any human word. Mowgli grew beneath the fangs and moonlight, with animals for his companions and jungle as his house. Baloo the bear taught him the words that kept him safe, the greetings of the water trough, the cry of the hunt. Bagheera the panther, black as a thought unspoken, taught him the silence that walks with strength. Mowgli had to be presented to the pack and accepted. When both Baloo and Bagheera vouched for him, they had paid the price of a bull for his life, for the law demands that even mercy be earned. But Shere Khan did not forget the scent of the man he had half devoured. He called Mowgli an intruder, a broken rule made flesh. The wolves debated. Some said keep the boy, others said cast him out. Mowgli, with eyes that saw too clearly for his age, decided to answer with the red flower, fire. When Shere Khan came prowling nearby, Mowgli didn't run. Instead, with the help of his wolf brothers and his foster mother's buffalo herd, he set a trap. They stampede a herd of cattle, driving the massive wave of beasts over the sleeping tiger, trampling Shere Khan to death. Afterward, Mowgli stands over Shere Khan's carcass and skins the tiger to keep its hide as a trophy, claiming the jungle as his. Yet victory in the wild is never the end of war. When he grew older, he sought the village of men, thinking he might remember what he was meant to be. With the tiger skin on his back, instead of being hailed a hero, the superstitious villagers cast him out in fear. They label him a demon or sorcerer for communing with wolves. Their eyes were narrower than the tiger's. When they learned he spoke with wolves, they raised their hands to stone him. So he called to the jungle, with vows that no human will ever live in that village again, and it answered. Hathi the elephant moved first, followed by the monkeys, the serpents, the wind. The beasts tore the crops from their roots, crushed the huts, filled the wells with mud. By morning, The village was a ruin swallowed by vines, its fires drowned in the green silence. Man had been let out, the jungle let itself back in, but vengeance has a lonely aftertaste. The pack looked at Mowgli and saw man. The men looked at him and saw wolf. So he walked between two worlds, belonging to neither. But even kings are lonely. He returned once more to the village, and the wolves followed at a distance, howling farewells that shook the leaves. He did not look back. To stay wild is to die early. To stay human is to die slowly. Mowgli chose to live, and yet, some nights, when the moon spills through the trees, like silver blood, the wolves still gather and whisper his name. They say the man-cub walks the edge of their hunting grounds, barefoot and silent, his hand brushing the bark, as if greeting old friends. They say the jungle still bows where he passes, not as to a god, but to one who understood the law, that to belong you must give yourself to the hunger of the world. The law of the jungle endures, older than mercy, wiser than man. Kill only to live, speak only to truth, and remember always, the pack and the law are one. The leaves have stopped whispering, only the low hum of the earth remains, slow and steady, the heartbeat of something vast and ancient beneath your feet. The jungle exhales, the night exhales with it. Its law is silence now. Its mercy, rest. A single firefly drifts upward like a forgotten ember, and the air smells of rain and endings. The moon curls her fingers around the treetops, pulling a pale thread of light through the canopy, a path for you to follow out of the wild. Walk softly, traveler. The beasts sleep, but the stories do not. The stag and the shadow, the tale of Bambi. The forest does not sleep. It waits, even when the moon is thin as bone, and the wind sighs like something wounded. The forest watches its own. Every creature that moves beneath the leaves knows the same truth, that peace is only the space between footfalls of fear. Bambi was born into that silence, a trembling fawn, all legs and wonder. His mother's warmth was his only shield. He learned the world by scent and sound, the murmur of doves, the crack of branches, the thunder that was not thunder at all. His elders called the humans him. When he comes, they whispered. The air turns sour and the trees hold their breath. So Bambi grew under a sky that could kill without warning. His mother taught him where to feed and when to flee. The old stag, distant and grave, taught him that wisdom is simply fear made patient. And when winter came, white, merciless, hungry, the crack of his thunder took her from him. The snow drank her warmth, and with it, the only safe place that Bambi ever knew. But the world went on. He learned that the grass hides eyes, that safety is a lie the forest tells its children. Then came Gobo, Bambi's cousin, who was a weak fawn. He had been rescued by a human when injured, but later he returned. He wore the scent of men on his fur and pride in his voice, while wearing a collar around his neck. Man is our friend. They fed me, he said. They stroked my neck. They are not what we think. But the forest's silence deepened. The animals were fascinated and repelled by Gobo's complacency living among the humans. And one day the man came again. He is shot and killed by a hunter, and Gobo's body lay where the frosts could find it, with bullet holes in it. The collar did not save him. The forest bowed its head, and the lesson took root in Bambi's heart like the frostbite. The fawn's spots faded, and the antlers grew, branches of bone to match the trees that sheltered him. When the man came again, the stag stood tall and was struck down by fire that roared, but did not burn. He crawled, bleeding, into the thicket until the old stag, his father, found him and said, "Look, There among the leaves lay him, the hunter, the god of their fear, broken, still, and human. The old stag whispered, "Do you see Bambi? He is not greater. He isn't all-powerful. Even he must fall." And Bambi, through the haze of pain, understood. The forest bows to no one. All things bleed. All things end. Death spares no one. Not even man. Seasons turned. The old stag died quietly, as trees do, standing in his sleep. And Bambi, at last, stood alone among the glades, his breath curling like smoke in the dawn. He watched the mist roll through the hollow, and in it he thought he saw the shapes of those he had lost. His mother, his cousin, the ghosts of gentler days. But when the sun rose, there was only light and the whisper of leaves letting go. He did not weep. The forest does not mourn. It remembers. And so did he. He lifted his head, antlers gilded by morning, and walked on, not as a child of the meadow, but as its keeper, becoming a majestic stag himself. The forest breathed again, a hymn of death and renewal. Every life it had taken, it had also fed. Every ending was a seed. And Bambi, wise now, knew that survival was not victory, but it was enough. For in this place of green silence and red snow, to live another dawn is the only kind of triumph the wild allows. The hunt is over. The snow melts quietly into the soil, and the forest folds itself into stillness once more. Every branch that broke, every breath that fled, is gathered now beneath the moss. Nothing lost, only changed. Even fear needs its rest. The night exhales through the trees, carrying the faint scent of ash and rain. Somewhere, a stag lifts his head to the stars, listening to a silence older than sorrow. Breathe with him now. The world turns softly beneath the frost, and another story waits, patient in the dark. The elephant who fell upward, the tale of Dumbo. The circus sleeps uneasily. Behind the colored tents and painted smiles are chains that whisper, and laughter which has an edge. Among the cages, in the car marked donkeys, a small elephant cries himself to sleep. They call him Dumbo, not as a name, but as a wound. He was born small, a midget, his ears vast and trembling like pale sails. The others mocked him. When he tried to dance, he tripped over those unwieldy ears trying to balance a ball. When he tried to bow, and they jeered. So they stripped him of his name, Jumbo Jr., and crossed it out with paint and cruelty. The J was replaced with a D, and thus a slur became a sentence. They painted his face like a clown, set a dunce cap upon his head. As further punishment, the ringmaster turned Dumbo over to the clowns. Dumbo was heartbroken and would cry himself to sleep. While others laughed, the sawdust soaked up his tears. His mother, chained nearby, could only reach him through bars. She rocked him with her trunk in the dark, humming low, a sound like thunder turned kind. The night around them was velvet and merciless. Loneliness is a long lesson, and Dumbo learned it young. He had no friends among his own kind, only Red, a small robin in a gray hat, who perched upon his water pail and spoke with the courage of something tiny. "Fly," said the bird, as if it were the simplest thing in the world. "Fly, and you will never hear them laugh again." But Dumbo was a creature of earth, his heart as heavy as his body. Still he tried climbing ladders meant for jesters, flapping in moonlight, falling, rising, trying again. Even the owl in the tree, a pompous professor, Professor Hoot Owl, a supposed psychiatrist with spectacles of nonsense, charged him $10 to say, "If you want to fly, then fly." So he did. One night, tired of being laughed at, he climbed the high platform meant for clowns. He wanted to be able to fly, so that he could fly away from the circus and the humiliation. The tent was empty, the sawdust cool. He closed his eyes, spread his great ears, and let go. For a moment, the world held its breath, and then he rose, not gracefully, not like a bird, but like something that had defied the laws of its own sorrow. The air lifted him. The earth forgot to hold him down. He flew past the cages, past the sleeping crowd, past the ring where his tears had fallen. The robin followed, crying with joy, and even the stars looked astonished. When morning came, they called it a miracle. The ringmaster smiled the smile of prophet. The elephants whispered his name with envy now. But Dumbo did not hear them. He circled the tent once more and landed beside the cage that held his mother. Her trunk reached out, and for the first time, he was high enough to touch her face. He had flown not to perform, but to return, and that was enough. The circus rolled on, the crowds cheered, but somewhere behind the tents, a robin's feather drifted in the dirt, a reminder that even in a world of ridicule and rings, the smallest creature can teach the largest to rise. The lesson was never about flying. It was about believing the air would catch you, even when no one else would. The laughter fades. The lights dim one by one, until only the moon remains, a single pale spotlight on the empty ring. The sawdust still holds the shape of small footprints, and above them, the air trembles softly, as if remembering wings that were never meant to exist. The train whistles in the distance, carrying its painted cages through the dark. Somewhere within, a lullaby hums low and tired, and the night, merciful at last, draws the curtain closed. Breathe now, traveler. The tent is empty, but the dream of flight lingers still, waiting for dawn. The sword and the lesson, the tale of the boy called Wart. Once, before the crowns and the wars and the songs of Camelot, there was only a boy in a crumbling castle, chasing hawks, through corridors and dreams, through forest mist. They called him Wart, a name small enough to fit a child who had yet to discover he was a king. And there was Merlin, old and young at once, a man who lived backward through time, whose eyes carried the memory of endings that had not yet begun. He came not to dazzle, but to prepare. He knew what this boy would one day lift from stone and consequence, and so he taught him what all rulers must learn before they grow teeth. The lessons did not come from scrolls or sermons, but from the pulse of the living world. Merlin transformed Wart into various animals. Each transformation was a cleverly disguised lesson about politics and human nature. As a fish, Wart swam beneath the moat's green glass and met a predatory pikefish, a gluttonous tyrant who ruled by fang. Might is right, hissed the great fish, circling like hunger itself, watching him with fierce, pitiless eyes, while preaching that power alone matters. Wart escaped with the truth writhing in his chest, that power without mercy devours everything, even itself. Then, as a hawk, he lived among wings bound by fear. The birds marched and drilled under a blind colonel's command, their cries all echo and obedience. From them Wart learned the emptiness of pride that does not question, and the madness of order without kindness. Merlin then warned Wart about certain creatures, labeling them dangerous. Wart insisted on experiencing everything, so Merlin reluctantly turned him into an ant. As an ant, he entered a world where thought had been replaced by rule. Above the tunnels, the words were carved, "Everything not forbidden is compulsory." He heard no laughter there. The ants have no individuality. Their language has no words for freedom or happiness, only done and not, with just the drone of labor and propaganda. And he fled with his mind bombarded by propagandistic broadcasts about glorious war and duty, still echoing with the hum of lost freedom. As a goose, he learned peace, to fly without borders, to see no difference between earths divided by men's maps. The geese fought no wars, their sky belonged to none. And when he returned to the ground, he felt the weight of humanity anew. As a badger, he was told the oldest story of all, that once mankind had a choice between living as beasts in harmony or taking fire and tools and weapons. They chose dominion, they chose distance from the wild, and so the world was broken. Merlin watched him change, season by season. Sometimes he smiled, sometimes his eyes darkened, as though he saw the crown already heavy upon the boy's head. He spoke in riddles, and in his silences the future trembled like a drawn bow. Then came the sword. It waited in the churchyard, buried not in the earth, but in fate, its hilt gleaming through frost. Men had tugged at it for years, each one dreaming of rule, each one leaving their sweat on the steel. When Wart came upon it, he only sought a weapon for his foster brother's tournament. He did not know what the blade would recognize. He took the handle in his hands, and the world held its breath. The stone sighed and let go, and all at once, the boy who had been every creature in the kingdom became the one meant to rule them. They called him Arthur. The bells rang, the people knelt, and somewhere far away, Merlin wept, for he had seen the shadow of Camelot's end in the reflection of that shining sword. But the boy smiled. Unaware, he thought only of what his teacher had told him. Use your might for the right, not for power. Let the strong protect the gentle, and the law of kings will bow to the law of kindness. And though history would one day forget, that night, under the cold stars, the future king's heart was still soft enough to listen. The stone is silent now. The blade rests in its cradle of shadow and memory, its light dimmed, waiting for the hand that will draw it again in another age. Around it, the wind moves like a prayer half remembered, carrying the scent of iron and rain. Even legends must sleep between wars. The wizard walks backward into the dark, his footprints filling with starlight. Above, the constellations turn like slow machinery, forging destinies yet unwritten. Rest, traveler, the lesson has been learned, but the night has more to teach. The cauldron of death and rebirth. The tale of Prydain. In the heart of Prydain, where mist moves like memory, and the mountains keep their dead, there was once a vessel forged from shadow, the Black Cauldron, the cauldron of rebirth. They said it pulsed faintly when no one watched, as though the thing itself still remembered the hearts it had stolen. No flame could melt it, no hammer could dent it. It was made for one purpose alone, to return the dead to life without soul or mercy. When a body was cast into its depths, it rose again, flesh cold, eyes blind, and will erased. These were the cauldron born, the army of Aaron the Death Lord, whose dominion was the realm of silence, dust and dead forces. The boy Tarzan heard tales of it when the nights were longest. He had dreamed once of glory, to be a hero, not a herdsman. But the cauldron was not a dream. It was dread which was given form. When Aaron's power began to spread, Tarzan and his companions, a princess with fire in her heart, a bard whose courage wavered like song, and a proud prince named Eladir, set forth to steal and destroy it. The road wound through marshes, where the air tasted of iron and grief. They saw battlefields littered with armor that still whispered the names of its wearers. They found the cauldron at last in a hollow of the dead, and even there, its sides were warm, as though it fed on the fear of those who stood too near. "Break it," said the bard, but the smith who had forged it long ago had left a cruel law within. No hand may unmake it save one that yields life itself. To destroy the cauldron, someone living must enter its mouth and never return. Eladier, who had once mocked the others and called himself the only true noble among them, fell wounded in battle beside it. His pride burned away with his blood, and in the smoke of dying breath he understood. No one else, he said, must bear this weight. Let the shameful find honor at last. He stumbled to his feet, laughed once, a sound like a sword breaking, and hurled himself into the cauldron. The ground shook, a roar split the sky, and the black iron cracked from within. When the smoke cleared, there was no prince, no cauldron, only ash cooling on the stones, and a silence so deep it felt like prayer. Some said they saw light rise briefly from the soil, as if the cauldron had given back something it had taken. The war did not end that night, but its heart had been pierced, and those who lived remembered Eladier's name, the way one remembers warmth in winter with sorrow and gratitude, and a small aching pride. But Pridane's hills keep their secret. They say the shards still lie beneath the earth, and if one listens close on a moonless night, you can hear a faint heartbeat deep in the soil, the last echo of the cauldron's hunger, waiting for the foolish and the desperate to dig too deep. The earth closes over the shards, and the last whisper of steam drifts toward the stars. The air smells of iron and something older, the scent of sacrifice, of endings that bought the dawn. All is still now, save the slow heartbeat of the world reclaiming what was broken. The mists fold in like curtains drawn by unseen hands. Somewhere in the distance, a single raven calls, its cry fading into sleep. Rest, traveler. The cauldron's fire is spent, but its lesson glows faintly in the dark, that life and death forever trade places beneath the same moon. The house that hungered. The tale of Hansel and Gretel. Once, in a forest that knew hunger better than mercy, there lived 2 children, and a man whose hands were blistered from cutting wood that would not sell. Famine had come to their door, thin and patient. It sat at their table and ate whatever was left. The man's new wife did not like the sound of hungry children. At night, her voice dripped like poison into his ear. "Take them into the woods," she said. "The forest will do what we cannot." The man wept, but fear of her and of starvation made his heart weak. In the next room, the children did not sleep. Hansel pressed his hand to the wall and whispered to his sister, "Don't cry. I'll find the way back." God doesn't lose children. When the house fell silent, he crept into the dark and filled his pockets with white pebbles that shone like moons. At dawn, their stepmother's smile was sharp as the frost. She gave them bread, thin as her kindness, and led them into the forest hand in hand with their father. Deeper they walked, until the world became all shadow and root. When no one watched, Hansel dropped the pebbles one by one. When night came, the moon rose and showed them the path home, each pebble gleaming like a promise kept. But promises can starve too. The second time, the door was locked and the pebbles stayed behind. Hansel crumbled his bread into a trail of crumbs, but the birds were hungrier than hope. The crumbs vanished. The forest did not. For 3 days, the children wandered until the trees parted like curtains, and there, in a clearing washed with strange light, stood a house made of hunger's dream. Walls of bread, windows of sugar, a roof of cake. The air itself smelled sweet enough to make them dizzy. They ate until their hands shook. Then the door opened. An old woman smiled from the threshold, her voice soft as syrup. "Poor children," she said, "come in and rest." Hearing which, they did. That night, they slept in feather beds. In the morning, they woke to chains. Hansel was locked behind bars. Gretel was made the witch's servant. The old woman fed the boy meat and milk until his belly hurt, but gave the girl only shells and scorn. Each day she pinched his finger, checking for fat. Hansel, clever even in a cage, held out a thin bone instead. The witch's eyes, though, were cloudy. Her greed was not. Weeks passed, and her patience burned away. Fat or thin, she hissed, I will eat him now. She ordered Gretel to light the oven. She cried but did as was asked of her. The air filled with the smell of iron and flame. Lean in, said the witch. Tell me if it's hot enough. Gretel bowed her head, pretending not to understand. The witch leaned forward to show her, and the girl, small, starving, furious, pushed. The scream that followed was brief, but the fire kept roaring, as if it had waited a long time for such a meal. When it was over, Gretel unlatched her brother's cage. They found boxes of pearls and stones. Cold light piled where warmth had never been. They took what they could carry and fled. A white bird led them to a river, and a gentle swan ferried them across without a word. At last they came home. Their father, gaunt with grief, fell to his knees. The stepmother was gone, taken by some unseen hand or by her own emptiness. The children spilled the jewels upon the table, and for the first time in years, the house was full. But Gretel never ate sugar again, and Hansel never trusted the sound of boiling water. The forest, they say, still keeps the scent of smoke, and somewhere beneath its roots, ashes shift when the wind passes by, as if a hungry thing still stirs, waiting for lost children to wander too close. The forest exhales, smoke curls upward from a memory long cooled, threading through the branches like a sigh. Somewhere far beneath the moss, a single ember still glows, faint, stubborn, as if even fire cannot forget the taste of fear. The moon moves across the hollow, silvering the empty cottage stones. No laughter, no crying, only the hush of trees keeping watch. Lay down your thoughts now, traveler. The danger has passed, but the night remembers everything. The Crimson Path, the tale of Little Red Riding Hood. Once upon a time, in a village hemmed by trees that never forgot their prey, there lived a girl in a hood, the color of spilled wine. The old women said it suited her too well, that red like that, the color of blood, had no business blooming on innocence. Her mother adored her dearly, her grandmother adored her more, and between the two, the child was loved into softness and naivety. So when the mother said, "Take these to your grandmother, a cake and a pot of butter, she is ill," the girl smiled, trusting the world would remain kind. But the forest was listening. It always is. She set out at dawn, humming as she went, the hood bright as a fresh wound among the pines. A wolf saw her then, not the storybook sort, but one with a hunger older than speech. He wanted her at once, but woodcutters were near, so he swallowed his growl and put on a gentleman's voice. "Where are you going, little one?" She told him everything, for she had never been taught to guard her words, never been told that not just animals but the humans too could be predatory, especially for little girls. The wolf smiled with all his teeth. "Ah, the first house past the mill. Yes, I know it well. Go you this way and I that, and we shall see who arrives first." He took the path of shadow and thorns. She took the long way through sunlight and flowers. And that, as it often goes, was how innocence lost the race to hunger. The wolf reached the cottage before noon. He knocked, tap, tap. "Who's there?" came the frail voice. "Your grandchild," he crooned. "Little Red Riding Hood, with a cake and a pot of butter." "Pull the bobbin," said the grandmother. The latch rose, the door opened, and the wolf, who had not eaten in 3 days, killed and devoured her in one breath. He hid whatever was left of her, and wiped his mouth. He put on her nightclothes, and lay among the sheets, his belly heavy with deceit and anticipation. When Little Red finally arrived, the cottage smelled foul of iron and ashes. "Grandmother," she called. "Pull the bobbin, my dear," said the voice within. Rough now, yet she mistook it for age. She stepped inside. The fire was burning low. The bed was high. "Put the cake and butter on the stool," said the wolf softly, "and come lie with me. It's cold, child. Come close." She undressed, as children do when told, and slipped beneath the covers. The body beside her was too large, too still, too strange. "Grandmother," she whispered, "what big arms you have. All the better to hold you, my dear." He said, "What big legs you have. All the better to run with, my child. What big ears you have. All the better to hear you with. What big eyes you have. All the better to see you with. What big teeth." The bed moved. The mouth opened, and a cruel laugh left it. "The forest fell," cried having witness what it beheld. "Little children, how much can they really resist?" He stripped her of her innocence before killing and devouring that poor innocent thing. And the wolf, at last, was no longer hungry. The wolf, you see, wasn't actually an animal, but a cannibalistic child predator. No hunter came that night. No miracle saved her bones. Only the hood remained, a red petal caught on a branch, fluttering whenever the wind remembered her name. Some say the forest grew quieter after that. Others say it only learned to wait longer. The fire burns low, and the forest still hums with memory. You have walked the crimson path with me, step by trembling step, and now you know what became of the girl in the red hood. Tell me, my dreamwalker, which moment lingered in your chest the longest? Was it the sound of the latch lifting, the tremor of the wolf's voice beneath the covers, or the quiet after all was done? Leave your thoughts below, your favorite part, or the one that chilled you most. And if you'd walk deeper into the woods again, subscribe to the temple so the next dark tale finds you when night falls once more.